Right, this is going to be another episode of Snake and Banter. Obviously, it's actually a shame in a way that Launders got hired. Otherwise, I could have done a joke like, welcome to the brand new season of the No Majors Club, here with me, Maui. But actually, it turns out this time Launders got hired. So let's just start there. Launders, just initial thoughts. This might be the first piece of media people see aside from your stream. What do you think of getting hired to the major?
I mean, it's not. I mean, Scrunny brought up the other day that I was talking about how like we've like grinded for a long time, and then we've had good luck in these last couple of years with majors.
Sure.
And he's like, you waited a long time for a major, and I was like, fuck, I really did. So, but I mean, I think up until I got hired, I genuinely feel like that the majors were fine without me. I think all the talent were so good. So now I don't think the majors would be the same without me. I have that feeling. I think I'm good enough. So I think I should have been hired. I think it's a shame that you guys weren't hired. I don't know if you wanted to be hired, Dunk, but I think you should have.
I would have said yes if they'd have asked. They never asked, so don't worry about that one. But the thing on that one is, spoiler, I might be on the outs of PGL anyway, because if people notice I didn't do the Antwerp event, but that's for some other reasons that we all now pretend don't exist. So it's all good. Don't worry about it. Oh, I would say this. How many majors have you actually done? Like 2 or 3? You did like just the post online ones, right?
Yeah, it's Antwerp, Rio, and Paris. So
oh, right, because you didn't do Stockholm, right? Okay. Okay, you've done the last 3, though, yeah? Yeah, okay, you're on a little heater. Not bad.
Better than Device, you know what I mean?
Okay, well, fucking hell. Shots fired immediately. All right, okay. Mate, you sound the greatest player. Isn't he your goat? You're taking shots at your goat like that. Holy fucking hell. All right.
Yeah, I feel like I'm in a safe space for that.
Okay. Right, Maui, obviously I'll ask you the opposite version. What do you think about not getting hired? I mean, you were actually on a streak yourself, right? You also didn't do Stockholm, but then you did all the ones after that, right?
Yeah, for not getting hired for the major, I feel like, I guess I saw it on the wall in terms of the fact that I just didn't have contact with PGL. It's not necessarily something where you're a sure thing for anybody. I feel like we've seen some of the best casters and analysts not get hired for particular events for kind of reasons behind the scenes. So I'm not really sure what that would be. Like, for example, ESL hires me, even though I'm like not a total mainstay with ESL, they still hire me for Katowice, Cologne, Blast. They hired me for like World Finals, Spring Finals, all that stuff. And so it just kind of feels like an industry politic that I'm not even aware of. And I feel like that's just something where it could be just the taste of PGL too, because I'm obviously known to get a little bit hotter on the desk sometimes. And I think they just sometimes want like a really cool, calm show. Like if they don't want anybody that's going to bring like heaters on the desk, then I think they have. I'm not to say that nobody of the lineup can, but like, I mean, they don't have you and me, Thorin. So like, that says something right there.
I would just say on this topic, I don't really have much to talk about myself. Like, I don't work in this part of the industry anymore, guys. Like, as I said, I would actually have accepted. I would also accept it for Blast Paris if people didn't know. But it's not like these people are ever in contact with me, like floating the idea, like, what do you want to work this event? So to me, that's more like that would have to come completely out of the blue. Like, I'm not even doing any legwork, guys. So on that one, if it comes, it comes. If it doesn't, it doesn't. I'm okay either way. I'll also say as well, I will say a lot of my bias when I think of events was my era, and those people don't tend to work the events anymore. So it's not as burning a desire for me, even though it would be cool. What I would just say is this: the problem you have, Maui, is, and this I do want to actually ask you a question off this, is I actually get the feeling in the modern day, I don't think you could have actually done anything differently, mate, because I actually get the sense personally, especially with PGL, when I look at their hiring over the last few majors, I get the vibe that their approach, I will just say this, I think they are letting the other TOs be in their head too much, or they're in their own head too much. It feels like you're going out your way to go, right, wait, so it's my major, yeah? Well, yeah, you've got the major. So wait, so I could pick anyone then, yeah? Well, yeah, I guess. Well, then I'm going to pick like all the different people that like you wouldn't normally. It's like, you can do that. That's a thing. I'm going a different route. I'll just say this though. I'm fine with you doing that. But if you don't hire the obvious names, you better absolutely kill the major though. You bet, like, whatever choice you make, if they're bold gambles, they better actually be like a 10 out of 10 and destroy it. If you do that, it's all fine. Because I do kind of, my problem basically is like this. Not for someone like me, I'm not even working in that part of the field. But I do feel like, this is what the question I have to ask you, Maui, is. I do feel like, you know how we were having that discussion about if you're a team org right now, what are the incentives in CS? Basically, it's qualified to the RMR. It's not even win the major. Like, you get all the money for qualifying. So it's changed the incentive structure. So I would ask you the same question. Back in the day, when it was people like me, Yanko, Sponge, the perception actually was that there won't be any industry politics. And if you're just the best, if you're like top 3 at your role, you'll get hired to the major. So for you, obviously, that's kind of not the world you're in right now, right, Mary? Like, presumably, this isn't like an indictment of how good you are. So what does that do does it change your like motivation to do the events or how you think of the industry? Does it affect you in any way?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, that's why I've been kind of leaning on the stream a little bit more. That's why I've been like considering other options outside of Counter-Strike, if I'm being honest. Like I started like looking at other spaces and just kind of thinking like, okay, what are other alternative revenue streams if I'm not getting hired for these things? And so that's where I built up my stream to make like it's like it's not the same sort of income as obviously working an event, but it's actually decent enough now that if I just stream a lot, it can actually make me a good amount
okay.
now. And I actually don't have to rely on anybody for that really, other than maybe co-streaming privileges, because that's where I usually get my biggest viewership.
Oh, sure.
I would say that like for yeah, you want to be the best and that and everything like that. I feel like there's also something sort of like where you want to feel like a neutral party because you don't want to seem too aligned with too many. Like for example, Yenko not getting hired for so many majors in a row now does also feel similarly criminal. But I also think that like everybody kind of knows that he's ESL's guy. So obviously everything ESL he's a lock on, and it does feel like other TOs are trying to spread the wealth a little bit by not hiring per se Yenko in this instance. But I also think like if I'm PGL too, and I think of what happened during the last major, this is gonna sound a bit salty, and maybe it is a bit salty, but like when I said the thing about Cadian, or when I have like certain moments where I blow up on players, the front page just gets flooded with my clips. Twitter blows up too, and I feel like sometimes it actually overtakes the game in terms of like the conversation for a moment, and like if I'm just being real, like you're gonna see you don't really see other analysts just flood the front page when they have big pop-off moments today. Like, tell me the last time you've seen anybody that's on this major have a pop-off moment where that's flooded the front page. Like, it's just not really happening. So I feel like that's probably a look that PGL doesn't want to go for, where they'd rather just get someone that's a little bit more like milquetoast and just delivers the facts, really.
Listen, I think you should give credit to Blair. He had an amazing pop-off moment at the end of last year. Just obviously,
Yeah, it should be celebrated, actually.
yeah, it should. It should. In many ways,
true,
in
that's
many
true.
ways, Launders, she actually was the most prescient analyst in all of Counter-Strike. She nailed at the end of last year that just qualifying to the tournament is the success. She did. She nailed it, guys. She actually is the Kwisatz Haderach of analysis of CS. She was that far ahead. She saw what the future was. We were fools. We were
Yeah, she was
fools.
on the spice.
Anyway, speaking of that abomination, right, let's move on. So, okay, what is your good point for this episode, Lawrence? What are you bringing? What's the good point?
Okay, so my good point is that luckily for all of the players that have played for Ninjas in Pajamas post-res, your time on NIP does not count.
This is a good point. I don't know.
So this is good news. This is good news because a lot of careers and reputations have been saved with this point and this logic. And I think we've reached a point of inflection now where before this point, we would always say that if you play on NIP, you're going to ruin your career. And all the players that went there, whether it was Nock, Brolin, Alexi B, even ZTR playing for Metasport now and having success, ruined their careers and their chances of ever having a career or to be taken seriously enough to get another team to play on by playing on NIP. But now that so many players have had this consistent feature and some are recovering their careers post-NIP, I think the point of inflection has been reached and we can say safely that your time on NIP does not count. Okay? Alexi B playing for Na'Vi on the international roster's ever done at this point means that his time on NIP does not count. Brolin playing under Shuhei and actually looking like the Swedish prodigy that joined NIP in the first place and being part of a good team and playing well at the same time, Brolin, your time on NIP does not count. Okay? Nock, who qualified.
Why is this like the end of like a Judge Judy episode where she's like reading all the verdicts up? Keep going.
Went to the semifinals of Paris and qualified now to another major without NIP on a team that you didn't hear about in the tier 2. Not even close to a team like NIP. Nock, your time on NIP does not count. ZTR, you were able to beat Falcons and eliminate s1mple and make the biggest meme of the month after causing Falcons to pay for s1mple to play one best of 3 in entire months of salary. ZTR, your time on NIP does not count. And now Hampus, who has been top fragging on Bleed for the last month, the team that has come on the heaviest fire.
What a mental reach this one is. Keep going.
Hampus, your time on NIP does not count. You are vindicated.
I don't know about that last one. What I appreciate is that he started out with really good ones. Then by the end, it was like, if you just ever won a match, not on nip. So there you go. You're still good. You're still good, though. Yeah, it's all good.
Yeah, the delivery was perfect there. That was like the Maori, like, you are not the father type of beat. Like, like everybody's not the father. Everybody's like running off the couch right now. I mean, okay, where to even start with this? Like, I'll say, like, it's interesting that you can say that about people that played on NIP, but I think of, say, like, teams that also their time shouldn't count. And I think like the most prominent example in my eyes is probably Evil Geniuses. I feel like Evil Geniuses is a team where I kind of also want to give people a big pass, because it does feel like certain orgs, when you play on them, your skill, it just deteriorates for whatever reason, whether that's kind of higher management or anything else. But like, I guess there's just been a lot of great redemptions from the people that are on NIP. I'm not gonna go out on a limb though and say necessarily like Config and Headtrick are gonna have redemption arcs necessarily, because I felt like they were part of the problem at the end of their stints with NIP.
I have something for those players as well that have had careers or reputations from other teams. So the teams that, you know, and NIP is a focus in your career, I think we can just say it doesn't have to be. But if we talk about players like Device, he'll be remembered for his time on Astralis. Like, that's going to be the part of his career he's remembered for. And actually, I'll have something brave to say. I think Headtrick, you'll be back. I think Headtrick, what you had to go through on NIP is not an accurate representation of you as a player. And I think that what I saw in the Academy League was a player that was actually quite close to players like Bit and Monacy. And I expect that if you played under an IGL, let's just say, for example, like Kerrigan, I feel like he could turn you into a Brokey. I believe that Headtrick, your career can be saved, and your time on NIP does not count.
Here's the thing.
As a rifler or an opper?
He means rifler, surely.
Yeah. I'd be happy. I mean, he's opt enough that he knows enough that it wouldn't be like completely fraudulent experience for him to try opping again. But he was a rifler, like in the Academy League. That's when he was the best.
By the way, I'll even take that Headtrick point to map into all this. Here's the thing. In terms of the most literal interpretation of what launders says, like, I don't agree with that, obviously. All of this counts. Like, I've always said this to pros. The message to pros is the other way around. Your whole career counts. It's why, by the way, best example, someone like Glaive, he had to learn the hard way that it doesn't matter how many majors you win. If you have a couple of years that are ass after that, people will start to lower your stock. So all the matches do count. But in the sense of, as you say there, I'll reframe it, launders. In the sense that being in this bad NIP isn't definitive that you are a bad player or you can't ever be good. I do agree with that, because as you pointed out, basically, I could even use the Headtrick one as an even worse one. So Headtrick himself was an inexperienced Ukrainian rifler that was forced to AWP. By the way, that means every person on his lineup is now working with a flawed concept at the AWP position because he's learning the role. And then also, literally none of them were fucking, except Smooya on Fnatic. None of these players are native English. They're always second language. It's just that usually English is pretty good if you're Swedish, etc. But you can't take it for granted. They used to speak in Swedish when they're in some of these teams, or Danish, or whatever language. So international team already has downsides there. This is why people always forget this one detail. I always say that the two players who made international teams happen are Nico and Kerrigan. Nico, because he just showed he could be the best player even in an international team, and then Kerrigan showed he could win with an international team. But those are like the outliers, guys. I actually do think most times, if you have a choice to have like a heroic all-Danish team or an international team like Mouse, you should probably go with the all-Danish team, you know what I mean? Yeah, the upsides work out. It's why Launders does that meme on Twitter. Like, when you have all the other factors checked out, then that can be a big upside. The problem with NIP is you didn't have the upside. You had the downside of the international team, and you had none of the upsides. Like, you had all these disparate players from different teams that don't have any connecting history. You had players who all play the same role, and I've told this story on the last episode. Config even told us the nightmare scenario that instead of intelligently just figuring out by a triage who should have the role, they just gave everyone a go, depending on what map it was. That's probably the stupidest idea ever, because it'll yield what ended up happening. Everyone just looks bad. What that means is you take turns looking bad, and you're not even going to look as good, because you're getting like your spots 1 out of 3 times or something. You're not even getting any rhythm, any warm-up, any momentum going. You're just in and out, and you're trying to chop and change. Like, these are just identical pieces, which they aren't. You want to tailor the team. And then lastly, I'll just throw this in there. You're going to have zero culture. Like, by the end, you had a fucking Spanish in-game leader with Config, forget even Danish culture, just Config pig culture. I don't know, fucking yard of ale or something, I'm guessing that means. Then you have fucking boring-ass Swedish guys who wouldn't say boo to a goose, or in the case of Brolan, can I please have my rolls that I need to be got? Like, this was actually, for real, one of the worst, like, run teams I've ever seen. Like, it's like they had every negative combined simultaneously. So I do agree with you. I actually think, I've even said this when they were bad, I think actually almost every player could be redeemed. Like, they could all be on another team. The joke is, even people like Esatag could obviously be on, like, fucking Ecstatic or something, couldn't they? They could be on an all right team. So I do sort of agree, in the sense of, like, it doesn't mean, like, I don't dismiss you forever because you were on these shit NIPs. I do think you had the most crazy, extenuating circumstances of most players I've ever seen. And I already think, in general, this is a better approach if we can do for all teams. Like, I hate when people compare players one for one, and then they don't ask things like this, like, what language do they speak in the team? Who's his IGL? Who's his coach? Who's his support? When they don't, you have to factor everything in for me. So yeah, I think that's a good point, though. I think it's a fair one. I also do agree. I think you've done a good case pointing out that already some of them have made it out and sort of proven it. And yeah, I imagine if the others get to teams, they'll probably be good too.
And on your point there, like, a lot of teams have tried to go the international route because of what Kerrigan was able to do, a complete anomaly of an IGL and like a leader. So it wasn't because it was international. Kerrigan probably could have made a all Danish team. Of course, he's already done that, but like making an all Danish team nearly as successful with getting past his mental block of choking. Eventually, he probably would have because he's that good. And then you look at the other teams that have worked. Essentially, it comes down to G2 and Vitality.
Yep.
Vitality took till 2022 to get taken seriously. G2 didn't win a fucking trophy until 2022. The World Final was at the end of the year. So it took forever for the two, super team international rosters that are actually talked about today to get to that point. The rest of them have failed.
Yes. And you'll notice those two teams have fucking Nico, Morrissey, and Ziwa one. Like, they're pretty good players, guys. They'll sort of skew the numbers a little bit if you drop them in a game. Right, go then, Maui. What is your good point?
Mine's something that I think is going to benefit the health of the space if this is a trend that's going to keep on continuing, which is that I'm just happy that this Skyesports Masters is taking place in India. It's a $350,000 event, if people aren't aware, and so far the invites for the tournament are ENCE, Liquid, Big, OG, and NIP. And I think some people probably are going to look at this event, and I bet you a lot of people aren't going to watch it because it's actually running concurrently with the IEM Chengdu tournament.
Oh, okay.
And so that's something where it seems like pre-pandemic, this was very common where you'd have two tournaments of similar caliber running simultaneously. And
I mean, I'm assuming this team field is just everyone who didn't get through the qualifiers, right? The idea is they didn't qualify the Chengdu, so they signed up here, right? Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, people that got invited to this. So they basically, I think they just threw out invites to, like, say the biggest brand names, because I think you could have found a couple teams that were ranked higher, but I think that Skyesports probably was like, let's just bring in the big orgs because they're actually going to bring viewership and can shine a light on our space. And I just really think that this is a good, like, in terms of the calendar, everybody has talked about for the last couple of years how it's been dominated by ESL and Blast. And for some people, that's really beneficial, especially if you're a partner team in those leagues. But for other teams, it's been kind of the bane of your existence, that it's been very hard to get into those. And it's not like this tournament in itself is like a great example of, oh, you can be the small guy and still make it to a big tournament. But if we're headed in this direction where there's going to be more tournaments that run at the same time as other IEM or Blast events, then it gives these teams a better opportunity. It gives talent a better opportunity to get more jobs. It gives people just more opportunities to shine light on different parts of the space. And I feel like that's just something that's really gone away post-pandemic. Like, you don't really see the same, like, random star ladder, the same dream hacks that are going on at the same time as the big tournaments. And really, like, on top of that, I actually just really like the invites because we were not going to actually see Liquid, Big, OG, or NIP until ESL Pro League. And so that's just such a long time. And even then, like, you wanted to see them kind of in a higher stake LAN environment because ESL Pro League, everybody knows, is just kind of like teams just take ESL Pro League almost like practice. Some of them, they don't actually really try that hard in the group stage. Well, this is real money on the line for some of these teams. And for OG in particular, who aren't part of the ESL Pro League partner team base, then this is like, this should be their major. Like, they need to be trying really hard at this one. And so like, overall, it's just nice to see that this is, one, happening in the space again, that we're getting other tournament organizers, and two, it's nice to see a few of these tournament invites because I'm kind of bummed that I'm not going to see them at the major.
It's great to have new regions activated. It's great to have, like, more areas in which, like, there's a huge fan base. Like, we saw what Mongols are able to do in Mongolia. Like the amount they can fill a small stadium now in there because of they have a team that's good and players who actually think they can maybe end up on that, the Astralis of Mongolia. No offense to the Mongols at this point, but there's a huge benefit to, like, India has 1 billion people. It's just a place in the world where there's a lot of opportunity in terms of economic growth, in terms of just pure people to watch. Like, it's just a region that we could definitely use. I think all these teams were ready to fly to Asia in the first place to get to Chengdu, so they're mentally ready for like that, long travel day. And we're also going to have a lot of brand name teams fall off before 2025 and then probably disappear, if not like disband or like completely dissolve as org. So there'll be space at these tournaments to like at least have famous teams get to play if they don't qualify to the bigger events.
I would just say on both angles, like on the specific thing, actually this tournament does look quite cool. Like, I know what you mean, Maui. There used to be, obviously, in the 2019 and back years, it was kind of default that exactly this setup would exist. Like, if you didn't get either qualified to or invited to the big tournament, you would take a smaller one like this. Like, it might be a betting company runs it, or it might just be like some, maybe like we say here, they have 8 teams or 4 teams or something, just as a way to cut the costs, and you do like a weekend tournament. Like, I think it's awesome that those exist, because the best example why is teams like Liquid. Like, I've been making this point on all my shows. If this was like 4 or 5 years ago, it wouldn't matter what's happened with Team Liquid or Astralis, guys. You would never change the rosters that fast. The reason people are changing the rosters, even though they've spent millions, is because all of a sudden, when you don't qualify for a couple of events now, you could just be sat for like 3 months with no lands. Like, that can't happen at that point in time. Essentially, my old principle in the old circuit was it takes like either 3 or 4 months or 3 or 4 lands. Well, at this point in time, the joke is you didn't play those because you didn't qualify, but the 3 or 4 months is gone, and if the team doesn't look good, they're going to change the roster. So I actually do think you also, by the way, need tournaments like this. Like, by the way, the team right now on this lineup that could benefit the most would be Team Liquid. If Team Liquid won this event, it would somewhat justify or like turn around the narrative of like they're doomed and it's just over and every player's wrong and they should change the whole. This would actually give you like a slight reprieve, at least it like eye test wise, something for people to say, oh, you can play the game. Oh, this guy can do his role. Oh, hey, those aren't bad. And also, you look at the lineup. This is actually a better lineup than you realize on paper, guys. Like, remember, you see Big, obviously they're not an enormous name, despite the actual like literal definition of Big, but that team is a banger now. They're really interested. It's the best version they've ever had of Big. I am excited to watch them play lands. ENCE is obviously way better than everyone thought they would be. It's the whole Glaive Polish project. By the way, NIP I don't give a fuck about. As we point out in question 1, I'm not going to pretend to even care about that one. But the joke is, as we've talked about on past shows, even OG has the heavy god factor, a player who, by the way, almost certainly will be moving up, you'd figure, in the next year or so. So at least you can. The joke is just watch him now, and you'll kind of get the head start on when he gets to a good team and then what he'll do there. And also, I think he's in a perfect position as well, because if you lose in this scenario, no one's going to flame you. You're on OG. They've got their own NIPS quality. And then also, if you do well, we're just going to give you props. We're just going to say you must be a good player. So I actually think it's not a bad little lineup of players. And then the more abstract thing, like you're saying, I do think we do need these circuits. By the way, not just for teams either. You guys know this. If there weren't tier 2 and tier 3 lands, you guys wouldn't be in the scene right now. Like, one thing I will always say is I am incredibly grateful for the broadcast career I had, because I was doing something else, and I really was lucky enough to just have people in the industry message me, like, for real, launders, like, do you want to do the major? Like, I just got that out of nowhere. That's not normal. I am aware of that. Like, you're supposed to climb the ladder. And unfortunately, in CS right now, I feel like one thing we all ignore is, after the online era, because there's way less tournaments, we kind of pulled the ladder up, and it's just like 10 people in every row, but it's the same 10 fighting like fucking Batman tryouts for the last spot. But you can't get in if you're the new guy. Maybe if you're the odd host has gotten in. You know what? Maui got in just under the wire, but you don't see new people, guys. There's a reason why. And I think part of it, just like with teams, is because there's not enough tournaments. Like at this tournament, I'm assuming because of the names, I'm assuming there'll be some real fucking talent higher for this event. Like, there'll be some analysts and casters, and so they also get to show off their skills. Maybe they move up too. That could be cool.
And then you need LAN experience. I mean, the only reason I ever got good was because Blast put us in front of stadiums and crowds when we weren't ready. And that's the only reason I got good. There's no way to emulate that. Like, Jason Lake has like crowd noise in the practice room so they can get used to a LAN environment. Okay. It's a similar thing. You actually need to have the crowd. It's not the same as when you're sitting there in front of your PC and there's guys screaming in front of you. Like, you need to have that kind of pressure. So there's no faking it. And there's also, I mean, you could be a prodigy, but you don't need to become good. Look at me. I'm the most improved talent ever. I was literally the worst talent to basically get to this point. So if I can do it, like anybody can. The game has changed to get attention, to get the opportunities for sure. But you're right. We need the undercurrent of events for them to go to. Like, I mean, I relied on the DreamHack Opens. we play Academy League for the players, or even as a caster to be able to do events like
Sure.
that. I'm doing Launders Land in next month, and there are casters that are local that are going to come in and do that. I mean, when I got noticed the first times, 2013, casting LAN ETS, when I went out there for free to cast for the weekend, and then Sivo and ESEA both messaged me off of that one stream.
Right.
So you need to have the small events. Some people don't like to hear it, but you got to work for free sometimes just to try to do stuff. Anything to get attention. Starting a YouTube channel is probably the way that we found
Yep.
Maui, in the first place. You need to fight for the attention, and it's a new game. It's harder. But the events ultimately are the only way for that to happen. And it's the same for the players and the teams, as well as the talent.
Right. What about? Oh, by the way, the obvious joke I was going to make, but I'll let you finish. The point was when Jason Lake first turned on the crowd noise machine, Grim turned to someone and was like, "What's that sound? It's like are the birds outside." Because the joke is he'd never been in an arena before. That's the joke I was doing there. It's a good one. It's not a bad one, is it? It's kind of a slow burner, but it's all good. It got there at the end. Right. Okay. My good point very much ties into something we've talked about this episode. Spoiler, this is a mad indulgent one for my point. It's like, they're just shit I want to talk about, basically. I don't care whether you guys are interested or not, spoiler. But then again, why change the habit of a lifetime? So my good point is this. I think it's a slam dunk. I don't think anyone will dispute it, but I think we can wax lyrical on it. It's that Richard Lewis is the desk host of the major. Like, I'll just say this straight up. This is one of the areas where actually esports is whack, which is, like I said before, about the idea of incentives. The purpose of incentives, guys, in terms of how you'll often hear them used in a social context, is like economies and things like, what are you incentivizing people to do and what are you disincentivizing? Like, for example, what taxes do you place on something to make people not do something? What do you give a benefit for or a subsidy on their taxpayers? So essentially what you're trying to imply is that when you set things up the right way, people are going to do the things you want and not do the things you don't. So in the same way as I asked Maui earlier, because it's kind of a rhetorical question, like, how can you just try and be the best at your job as an analyst, knowing that even if you are, you might just not get hired? Remember, he isn't playing the game. He can't go 1v1 against the other analyst and beat him and get his spot like the players can and get in the RMR. He has to actually be picked by a guy, could be any guy depending on what TO, and unless that guy likes him, I mean, what were we doing for the last year? You know what I mean? It might feel like that. I can imagine his talent. So similarly, right, I'll just say this. Everyone loves to laud Richard for having those 3 Journalist of the Year awards. I hope people understand, if there'd been a Journalist of the Year award every year of Richard's career, he would have like 10 of those motherfuckers. 3 is nothing. Like, that's how good this guy was. So similarly, for events, I mean, I don't think Maui's worked with him, but I think Richard overall was the best desk host. And I say that in a world where, look, I liked some of the, I think Machine was really good too. But here's the difference with Machine, though, is Machine also, this is why I think it's right he transitioned to being a caster. He was also becoming part of the show more himself. He was becoming part of the brand too. And so I always thought Richard walks the line the best, in my opinion, of being just the host who's setting you up, the equivalent of the point guard passing you the ball. And then sometimes when it's the right moment, he will step in and be part of the play himself, as it were. And I think he's the best I've seen at walking that line. Obviously, I am incredibly biased. I've worked with him for a long time in many contexts, but I've just seen it. It doesn't matter who he's with. I've seen him on shitty RMRs where people I thought were washed, not even good analysts, make them hold the desk together. By the way, he's also amazing because of his time on E-League at running like the basics of the hosting, like running down and bringing you in from the break and throwing to the right people. And he's the person, by the way, who's always, if you're on a desk with him, when the camera cuts to you and he's not on the camera, he's going to check in his ear, who am I throwing to exactly now? So he can make a funny line of thought. He's not just going to wait for an auto cue or something. Like, the guy's a mega pro. So to me, it's a slam dunk. I didn't know he was going to get hired, by the way. I never talked to him about the major at all. This one came to, I found out like you all did today. I just opened my Twitter. I was like, fucking hell, what? But I tell you what, I'm really glad. And what I was getting to before with the Journalist of the Year award thing is, I think it's actually a travesty this guy didn't do more majors, man. I think this guy should, for real, in my opinion, people like Richard Lewis, unless your company has a massive reason to hate him, he should pretty much automatically get the invite. If he turns it down, that's on him. But I think every major should have been giving this guy the invite. I thought he killed it at Stockholm too. I think he was mega there. So what are your guys' thoughts on this move?
I will just say that on Richard, I realized, like, after seeing the announcement today, the first time I met him was, I think, when I met both of you at the same time in 2016, like Gfinity or the
Sivo, maybe?
Minor, Sivo America's Minor, something like that. And Richard was somebody who I was really scared about meeting because a lot of people. So there was some crazy guy on ESEA who was online who was talking about how I should replace him in his job, even though I wasn't even a desk host. I hadn't even done any casting or something really random like that. And then Richard thought that I hated him, and then there was this beef with people we never even met each other. But for everybody who hasn't met Richard before, he is one of the like kindest persons to meet in real life. So I'm actually pretty excited for people who haven't met him, because I realize there's a lot, to actually get a chance to shake his hand. And if you're a fan, definitely approach him, because he is a really, really like warm person. Is like the way I describe him. Super easy to be around, and obviously great at his job. When it comes to who's the best, I mean, I normally don't like to talk about this stuff with talent as like someone who works, amongst talent. But this is my take, is that a certain talent reach a point in a very subjective field where you're not, in my opinion, not necessarily the best, but the right flavor. And I think that when I look back on all the casters I've always loved, whether it was James and Dan or Sato and Henry or Anders and Semler, I realized that there were different periods of time in my life where I enjoyed listening to that kind of caster more. I enjoyed the energy of Henry and Sato more. I enjoyed the banter of James and DDK more. I enjoyed the classic sort of voice of Anders or whatever it was. And I realized that it came down to flavors for me at a certain technical level when everybody is that good. And for me, Richard and Machine are the two best desk hosts, and they were both very different flavors.
I would say that one of the things that hurts the most about not working it is not getting to work with Richard, because the way that I perceive him as a host, I'll watch what he does on the desk. I'll see how he interacts with other people, but then I think about I wonder how he would interact with me, because I've had a lot of conversations with Richard over the last handful of years, both in person and online, and I feel like our rapport is incredibly strong, and I think that's due in part to just the way that both of us can disagree with each other very strongly, but it never becomes hostile one bit. I think both of us can be seen as lightly empathetic people, probably Richard more so than myself. And so even if I do have a pretty strong disagreement with him, he'll find a way to make sure that at the end of it all, there's still the olive branch that's remaining. And I think that it would have been such a blessing to have that opportunity. So hopefully for the next time, that'll be the case. And in terms of him actually just being on this one, yeah, I'm actually really surprised too, because actually Richard kind of told a few of us, he kind of said on stream that he was going to be at it, but he didn't say that he was actually going to be working it.
Right.
And so he was teasing this for a while, and it is really cool to get this. I think that in terms of
what makes me mad is when you say that, I'm instantly can remember a very good memory. Yeah, he did say something. I'll be at the major, but like you say, when he said it, he gave the vibe of I might just go myself or something. You know what I mean? Like he slipped it in there. So
did.
Technically, in the movie, he did tease it, but he gave it in a way where we could make a misassumption. Basically, didn't he? It's true. He sort of did do that. It's true.
Yeah. He kind of did. He did say he was gonna go, but I don't remember. He never publicly said that he was actually.
He just dropped it in. I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a nice little sneaky way to go about it. I feel like I kind of like this in terms of just the last laugh, because already the scores of his haters online who are just so against it, because one thing or another, whether he flamed their favorite player, whether he actually flamed them directly in his Twitter replies or whatever, Richard has made a lot of enemies over time, but I think that it's undeniable.
They're not real though. They're not fucking real.
I hope
people
not.
Online are not real.
No, they're NPCs.
The strength of his work speaks for itself, though, and that's why I'm glad he's there.
Sure.
People don't know this, but they don't go to events, because not everyone goes to esports events. But you always hear famous people say you never see a hater in real life. It's so fucking true.
Oh, it's true. I'll tell you, the wildest thing ever is my own career in that sense, Launders, because I would go to events and for real, I think I've done 70 plus lands, right? I might have had someone ever say something insulting to me 2 times ever. And by the way, I'll even say, expand that out to everyone. There's been fans that were Brazilian fans. They were never saying any crazy shit though. Even those fans that online seem mad, they never do it in real life. And by the way, I'd also say similarly about what you said about Richard. Even though online he might look, he is actually, by the way, one of the most happy to talk with fans of any talent I've ever met. The joke is I'm the one who'd be like, fuck this, let's get to the fucking room, the food's there. And he'd be like, well, come on, we can take a picture with this guy, surely. He was the one doing that shit, man. I've never given a fuck. I would just be like, look, I don't know if you're mad at me. I've got to get to that room. So that's just who I am. But yeah, I agree.
There's one clip that I remember of it's from boxing, where I can't remember what fucking fighter it was, Tyson Fury or something. They had him in the back, and they had a reporter out in the audience. And then they said got them to talk shit about Tyson Fury, basically, or just say their honest opinion if they didn't like him. And then they had Tyson Fury walk out And then you should
right.
see them change, even though there's a camera right in front of them. Completely
I
think, I
think it actually was Mike Tyson. You mean Mike Tyson?
It wasn't all recorded.
You meant Mike Tyson, but I know what clip you talk about. I think I've seen this.
Was
before.
it Mike Tyson?
Yeah, because
the
reason it was Mike Tyson is because obviously he's so intimidating, isn't he? And like the idea was, it was like, what do you think of Mike Tyson? And they were all, yeah, you're right. They were all like, he's not that good. But then obviously when he walks up behind them, we're like, oh, all right, Mike, yeah, I fucking love to meet you. Oh, true, of course.
Yeah, bite my ear off, Mike. You know what I mean?
Right, okay. What is your bad point then, Launders?
Okay. My bad point is that Cloud9 are wasting our time. So there was a part of me that was actually kind of happy that Astralis were clearly going to fail at some point. They failed miserably. I actually thought it was, so I'll just say, I thought they were going to work, and I'm really unhappy that they failed. Even though this team was built in like the most disgusting way possible, I actually was excited about watching them. So yeah. I thought Blame was getting better. I thought the IGL, maybe he would be able to do it. But I've been let down by these players turned IGLs in the past. I should have learned a lesson. But either way, I think Cloud9 are wasting our time because they don't have an opper. I know it's a tired point at this point, but the fact of the matter is they've qualified to the major. Some of the teams like NiP and Astralis are going to face reality now that they haven't qualified to the major and will make moves. Cloud9, on the other hand, will play out the major. They won't win. They might have a decent run. And I think the maddest irony about Cloud9 is they're actually playing better as a team than they are as individuals. When you look at this roster and they have Electronic, Axile, and
Hobbit.
Hobbit, yeah, as three.
Okay.
Yeah, as three players, those three who should, as individuals, be able to carry constantly. Electronic's their best player. He doesn't even top frag that consistently anymore. Perfecto's probably the best individual player. The biggest irony is that the games they're winning now is based off of their team play. It's not their op, it's not their star rifler, it's their team play, which is so sad and kind of embarrassing and a little weird, and no one likes it, and there's no way they're going to win a tournament. So the bar that they have is the same bar that Liquid has, that G2 has, that FaZe have, that Na'Vi have. It's to win a tournament. Other teams, you can build up to get to it. When we talk about Bleed, we always talk about them in the context of the matches they play in and the tournaments and the restructuring in the tier 2 and stuff like that. When we talk about Cloud9, you expect them to win tournaments. It's a fair bar to have. They will not reach that bar, and it doesn't seem clear when they'll make that roster move. So right now, I would say that's the biggest problem with Cloud9. Let's compare them directly to a regional matchup, to Spirit. Fuck Shiro, they don't even have Donk. How are they going to even be the best team at a tournament? They're not even the best team in the region.
It's weird. At the end, he made it almost like a political talking point, didn't he? How are they going to be the best team in their fucking thing if they're not the best in their region? I leave it to my opponent, the Honourable Sir. Come on, hit me.
Yeah, well, yeah. Spoiler: Russia's like the strongest region right now. No, the way that Cloud9, I like that you bring up that idea that their teamwork has actually looked better than their individuals, because, well, that's going to be the case if you obviously don't have an operator. And beyond that, the fact that Electronic has kind of, I guess, rolled it back to become their best player overall, as opposed to there being some new rising talent, because I think the precipitous fall off of Axile has been the most disappointing narrative of this team, but also, unfortunately, one that I sort of expected, where it's just like the peaks of riflers is just, generally speaking, quite short unless you're talking about transcendent players. So for Axile to not have, and I don't think Axile's ever really found his footing in CS2, like his multi-frag potential, even from the exact same positions that he would find 2, sometimes even 3 kills in CSGO, has just never been found. And I think when CS2 dropped, it felt like the rest of the competition sort of leveled up and seized the opportunity that the game leveled people out a little bit, whereas Axile didn't really have that motivation. He's never really had great body language, for one, but I feel like it's really tough to see an Axile right now that's going to come hungry enough to be a difference maker on this team. Like, he gets it's like so annoying with him. Like, he'll have the one map where it's like, is he actually back? And then you just watch the next one and it's just like, that was such a fleeting moment for him. Perfecto, yeah, I guess he's really good. He just doesn't always have the most impactful positions to even make use of his individual ability right now.
I mean, I'll just say he's been amazing. Like, he's actually playing the best CS of his life right now. But it's not like he's going to carry, obviously, is your point, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And the point still stands that, yeah, like, you can do you can do the absolute most you want with a 5-man rifler core, and then I feel like I saw Hobbit opping on Nuke actually the other day versus Saw, right? Like, so he still does op on that map, and then Boomich ops on I think every other map, and that's still just such an inconsistent idea. And I know that it really feels like Cloud9, their hands are just tied right now, where they had this lineup and there was no opera that they wanted to get or that the management wanted to pick up for the price that it would have cost them. And so everybody else just has to kind of twiddle their thumbs and say, well, we got to do the best we can with the tools we have. And it's like going into an F1 race with just like a standard compact car. Like, what are you even doing at that point? Like, you're just wasting everybody's time, even if you have the best drivers in the world. So it's it's just super disappointing that we know that. Like, I think like Cloud9, because of their teamwork, like when I still love watching Cloud9 in a post plant retake or post plant defense where all three of them have to just work off of each other and just use fundamentals and just basic mechanics in order to close out situations. That's when they're at their absolute apex. Like, I feel like I'll favor them in almost every situation in those kinds of moments than any other team right now, which is so sad to say, because obviously it's about the first 40% of the round where the Opera has so much impact in terms of opening picks and making sure you can run certain types of setups, which they just don't allow themselves to do.
The trouble with this for me, when Cloud9, is this team has shown us exactly how CS2 is different from CSGO. Because initially, remember, because of people like, remember, it was all the AWPers except Modesty basically was shit at the beginning of CS2. I mean, to be fair, the AWP was way harder to use as well. If you remember all the fucking weird things where it didn't line up with the fucking actual model on the screen and basic things you used to. So I will give them a little bit credit. But at the time, people kept saying, yeah, maybe it's just not about AWP anymore. You don't need the AWP, right? If you didn't need the AWP, this team would actually win tournaments, guys, for real. Like, the rest of the players are really good. Like, look at the lineup. Like, none of these players in theory are like bad. Even the Axel one is relative to like what you think of in the past that he can do. He's still a competent player. And the saddest thing is this team shows you that in a way there was a grain of truth to what the CS2 fans said. You can sort of make it work without the AWP. But this is the problem. Even when you say without an AWP, we normally mean you just don't have a really good AWPer, because you take one AWP is of like the star player role normally. This is like they literally don't have an AWP. That's the craziest thing about this squad. You look at the players, they don't even have people who secondary AWP. That's the maddest thing. There's a bazillion people in CS by now secondary AWP, and they are playing. They're fucking Russians, bro. There's no region in the world with more good AWPers. It's mental, isn't it? Like, as you say there, Maui, even if they say any shit, I didn't like the price of it. It's like, bro, I don't care what it costs. Like, whatever it costs to get even a Zorte into your team, like, that's like you could win tomorrow if you have that player. It's so sad because what they're showing is you do at least need the role of AWPer, even if they don't actually have to be the best. I feel like just a placeholder would even do in this team. And then in terms of the players, this is also why I know you do need an AWPer. Because even if Axile did play like those past years in 2022 when he was like a mega impact player, they still wouldn't win the tournament. They would just maybe make like the semi-final or make a final or something. They wouldn't actually win the event. So I actually think it just proves you do need an AWPer. And then on the electronic one, dude, this one just kills me, because part of me also feels like, I'm just going to say it, I don't think electronic's ever going to be the old electronic.
You bit the poison apple of IGLing, man.
Dude, that's what I'm going to say. I really feel like, except for some very rare examples, I think the problem with the IGL is not that like you keep doing the role. I think once you see and think about the game in that way, you can't go back. It's like fucking you've left the Eden and the fucking veil has fallen and now you see things as they are. I mean, I'll give you another analogy. When you're a kid, even if you're shit at dancing, you don't give a fuck, do you? You just dance. But when you're a bit older, you might be better at dancing, but you'll be conscious. What are people thinking of me? Oh, am I silly? Is this an appropriate time? Basically, he can't just dance like no one's watching any more launders. Now it's in his head.
It's like this. It's like you could live a great life right now for like the next 80 years. Like, and if you lived out in the woods and knew how to like be self-sustaining, right? But if AI took over the entire world, obviously, then like and like controlled everything and just like destroyed the whole world, like you might be the last person to find out and would have lived the longest, happiest life in that time, right? But as soon as you realize and you live in a city and you think about AI taking over the entire world, you live existential dread every day of your life for the next 30 years, and then you eventually die. I mean, the time doesn't actually matter in this analogy, but in this situation, it's just being aware of the room being on fire. That is what ruins it for you. That electronic is no longer focused on his crosshair, but his radar and the whole map. That's the thing that people don't bounce back from, that you're pointing out. Like, I've heard players tell me this privately. I don't think you should IGL.
Yeah.
Players told me that about you Kinder at events. We heard Faflaren tell me that about some good players in the past. And
Yes.
I actually believe that Electronic could do it. The sad part is this time I thought it would be the Apex example. He would stick with it. I've heard he had great communication, the best on the team. I think he's always been regarded as a smart player. He has played for a very long time. Maybe it's like the second half of his career. But then when he gave it up, maybe you can't really truly give it up. And if you take that risk, you're fucked.
Yes. And I'll just say, because it's a witty way to end it, the analogy is just like the rifle itself. If you had the AWP, it's hit or miss. So if you hit, you can win. The problem with Cloud9 is they're pretty good, but they always do 3 for 99. 3 for 99. Classic M4A4 problem. You all know it. Y'all remember CSGO? It's not old at this point. I know. Whatever, there you go. I
was
agree.
thinking some nip,
I
like
agree.
30%. Okay.
I agree. It is a waste of time. Because the real sad thing is, this is why it's actually also harsh to criticize them. Because the stupid thing is, if we didn't actually, if there weren't roles and we couldn't say they don't have an AWPer, they are just like a top 10 team and they're a good team and they're not even bad. But as you say, Launders, the reason it's a waste of everyone's time is, bro, they could actually win tournaments. This team looks like it could win tomorrow for real. The joke is, everyone actually was focused on the IGL angle, but it's just fine. He looks like he's doing totally fine in that role. It's just, you need to have someone who does the sniper role, that's all. And I wouldn't say, just sniper. You have to be someone who can hold lines and hold a CT spot and let someone rotate. They don't have that at the moment. They don't have it.
He also is actually has moments where he clearly looks like the best operator on the team for what that's worth. But the problem is that his playstyle was so beneficial in 2021 for being a search IGL, someone who was very aggressive with a rifle. You don't want to do that with the op. It's just irresponsible. So it's at odds with his playstyle. Being the best player with the op is his own curse on this team. I don't know why they can't figure it out, but that's the sad part. He's not good enough to be an operator, and he's too good at rifling to be used in that role. So.
By the way, we need to design some sort of an IGL aggression spectrum. And obviously on the one side at maximum aggression is Boomich. And then obviously Jim, the other Russian, is on the other end. It's the Russian IGL aggression scale. They couldn't be more different. It's impossible, isn't it? It's ridiculous how are they from the same region? Right, go on then. What's your bad point, Maui?
Mine is that we as a community have highly underrated Saw as a coach for too long.
Okay.
And I feel like it needs to stop. I actually am going to even go as far as the community is actually probably right now overrating kyxsan as an in-game leader versus actually how good Saw is as a coach. Because if I were to credit anything to the resurgence of Heroic, it's actually easily Saw versus kyxsan. Because you can look at what kyxsan did with that Apex lineup after the Paris Major, and yeah, sure, they lost JL pretty quickly after it, but they were doing nothing. That was still the same in-game leader as kyxsan, and they had no notable results. They were doing so badly at practically every event that they were playing. The best finish they would have had after losing JL was that they came in second place at an Elisa Masters, and losing to a Furia team that we know has a million problems. And so when I think of Saw right now, I feel like I'm considering him to be probably a top 3 coach, and I think that the community maybe hasn't come along to that idea just yet. But what he has done with Heroic in such a short span of time, the very first the open qualifiers I was watching for the major itself, where Heroic looked bad, they literally looked like they didn't know their ass from their head. There were individual players doing plays that I felt like, oh my god, Nertz is a fraud. Oh my god, Tessus has no idea what his teammates doing at all. I didn't know what was going on that team whatsoever, but working off of the interviews that players have given on both ENCE and Heroic, I feel like people are just constantly crediting this guy for the amount of work that he's putting in and the amount of structure that he's giving this team and making sure that everybody knows what the common objectives are. I do hear some stuff here and there about kyxsan, but really I'm still hearing way more about Saw, and I feel like it's just bad to me that for whatever reason, coaches just get the short end of the stick in so many different capacities. And I'm just here right now to try to change the narrative a little bit and take it. And it's that you both everybody on a team is part of success and they're part of failures, but obviously you're only giving a certain amount. And right now what's happening for Saw is that it seems like for whatever reason people are oh yeah, that's kyxsan. People are kyxsan was always such a great in-game leader. We saw what he did at the Paris Major. It's people memory hold everything that happened after the Paris Major and how Apex just seemingly kind of fluked that run. And now when we're seeing Heroic have this linear progress on the team, it's we're giving a lot of that credit to kyxsan as opposed to Saw. And I just want to make sure that everyone everybody is aware in the room that this is a huge boost to Saw's stock as a coach, and there's a huge reason that they were giving him so much credit when it came to ends. Even more so, some of the players were giving more credit to Saw than they were to Snappy.
I don't want to beleaguer your point, and I will steelman it in the end, but I just want to say that I talked to kyxsan like at the last groups after the break, after they already had done the RMRs online. And one thing I talked to him about was that he never even met, he didn't play his first match with Saw until after the RMR qualifiers had happened. So when they first started out, like that was all kyxsan figuring out how to get good enough to qualify at least to the offline portion. So I can say for sure that he did have to do a lot in a very short amount of time to get the team going. But also, Saw was the person who scouted kyxsan for the team. I know that for a fact. So he actually went out of his way. And I heard that they paid $600,000 to get kyxsan on this roster.
Yes.
So that is like a massive amount of trust they gave over to Saw. Like to spend $600,000 on a point that someone made that you just hired. So that says a lot about, I think, like Maui, you're saying, how people feel about him behind the scenes. For sure, he has a lot of respect. And in the public face, definitely. Every time as a caster, I would always say, oh my God, that was a great call by Snappy. And then Snappy would go down in the interview after and said, actually, like during the tack pause, it was Saw who made that call. He definitely deserves a lot of credit for sure. But I'm both high on kyxsan and him. And I think maybe it's just it makes sense that they're a massive combo because right now their success isn't actually unexplainable. It's inexplicable how they, with the roster lock hitting Heroic and one of the two teams, them and YNk, got fucked over so hard, had to put together a team that had every excuse to fail, have managed to do this well. Like, actually insane.
Yeah, I would actually say, basically, on this player, there's even an angle I feel like people maybe have missed, which is if you ever saw, me and Maui actually saw this because it was in Flashpoint 1. He used to be the in-game leader of the team that, shockingly, the Finnish team, Havu, that came third in Flashpoint 1. Everyone was like, the fuck? Like, they were better than that Cloud9 team, the American one, if people remember, and Dignitas. Like, there were better than loads of teams that they had no business being. And one of the reasons I can tell you right now, this guy was the in-game leader, is because they actually had, like, real strats, by the way. They actually had, like, structure in a way that they had no business having from, like, tier 2. I remember watching it, like, dude, it's not even the players. Like, most of these players are never going to go anywhere. There was like one or two had a little bit of talent. It was actually like the team structure was way better than you expected. So some of that clearly has gone into being a coach because the whole time he's been a coach, they've had loads of different players, guys. People are going to forget it's not just Spinks that came in and out and Nerds. They've been through a lot of players, and it was very quickly before they got to the good lineups that this guy had them becoming a functional org again. And actually, remember, they used to be the one that everyone thought fucked up by pivoting from Finnish. They're actually now probably the best example, along with Mouse, of how you can min-max and do the international route and still get like pretty good teams that, like, if anything, punch higher than you'd expect possible. And this guy has to be part of why, because he was there the whole time. And also, here's why I'll give you my reason why I think he doesn't get any credit. Is because, first of all, we have a massive problem in Counter-Strike already of giving IGLs credit for everything except people fragging. We already do that anyway. Even though I've tried to point out to people, I made a video about this once, it almost should at this point be the combo of IGL and coach, not just IGL or coach on their own. In the same way as if anyone plays a MOBA game, there are certain roles in the game aren't individual roles. Like if you play League of Legends, jungle and mid have to work together. They're not like separate roles in the same sense. So if you have a terrible jungler and you're a good mid laner, I'm not going to judge you because you lose the game. Maybe you couldn't win. But at the same time, if you have an amazing jungler and you're an amazing mid laner, I've got to give credit that he helps you out as well. So I think the other part here is, to me, it's the combo of Saw and Snappy. Seems like it's the secret sauce. Because at the moment, everyone either just gave Snappy all the credit, or they just, in a vague sense, without saying Saw's name, say YNk is doing a great job. But it's true. They never hit Saw and say, Saw scouted this player, Saw found this guy, Saw did that. He never gets that credit. I'm with you. Even though you look at like his actual results, this guy's fucking resume is bonkers for the players he's working with, especially because they only become the players you now know after working with him. That's a hell of a fucking positive right there. I'll even throw this out there as well, which is that like some of these players, when they go elsewhere, like Spinks, it's like they don't just plug right in tomorrow. That suggests that they understood something about how his game worked and how they set him up. And also, if he really is the one scouting all these players that are coming, remember, at least kyxsan wasn't like, fucking deep in a major. The ones that were coming from Endpoint, nobody even watches that level of CS. He's not just watching it, he's actually watching it with like open eyes and curiosity to be like, could this player play at the top of tier 1? Bros, that's not what people are doing, guys. Most people, I can tell you, who are team orgs and coaches are just doing that like HLTV one for the future thing of like, who has the most bonkers broken stats without even watching the game? And then they go and see, is that guy good? Like, they're not doing this shit of like, this is like fucking old sports scouting where an old ass guy in a trench coat goes with a little notepad and watches and you don't even know it. What's he even do? Who the fuck's that? And then the joke is that's like a scout from like the fucking Yankees or something and he's just like straight fire and he's got like the next amazing player from the minors, as it were. Like, that's what Saw feels like, because that's the angle I'm really interested in is this lineup of Ents is interesting, but I want to know what the future Ents lineups are going to be like without him. Because if he really was the secret source of the scouting, guys, that's half of the Ents' success, is that they would get players for cheap that were just way better than they should be. If they don't have that anymore, it's going to be interesting. Meanwhile, for Heroic, that is an incredibly big boon. Because I'll tell you right now, this is actually the piece that was never inserted in the off-season drama, so people don't know this. Supposedly, part of the will they won't there of the Heroic core being potentially the Ents core, and instead they went to Falcons, was also about Saw. Like, I've heard, it wasn't as simple, does Snappy say or does he go? Part of it I've heard was that, like, at some point in this whole scenario, Saw was basically like, look, I'm going to Heroic, they're going to sign me. And so it wasn't a case that they all could have stayed. Maybe some of the players could have stayed in Ents, and Snappy could have stayed, but, like, maybe Saw was going to Heroic anyway for the bag or whatever, you know. Then when he goes to Heroic, unsurprisingly, he wants his core. He wants his boys from Ents, doesn't he? Look, he got one in the end, he got Nerds, but he was trying to get the other ones. I can see that too. That also makes a lot of sense. Didn't happen. And by the way, in light of the fact, just like Ents, if you don't get the pieces you want, this is about the best pivot I've ever seen. Like, in the case of Ents, it's even more mad. Richard revealed they had something mental, like 12 hours to find players for that, like, qualifier after they found out they were losing the players to Falcons, which is like, that's even more insane that you then got it together, qualified, and did the major, did the Katowice run. But this one's just as insane. Like, this is a lineup where on paper, like I was saying on the other show we did, as you put the pieces together one by one, you're going, what even is this like? It's only at the end when you see them play, like, actually, this is pretty good. The fuck? Like, this actually, I mean, the joke is it is much better than Australis. It just is. Like, it's a way more functional team in every sense. Like, you've took the nameplates off it, but there wouldn't even be a discussion. No one would give a fuck about the Australis lineup compared to them. So, no, they killed it in every sense. Here's the thing, though. Like I say, the problem will always be, when it comes to things outside of the game, it will always be narrative. It'll always be storytelling. So essentially, Saw's biggest problem is this. If you're watching right now, here's how you actually get the credit for what you do. They said it to you themselves. You have to say what you're doing in the interviews. If you do that, people will start to remember. It'll come up as points on these shows. And over time, you will get the credit as a coach. Whereas, hopefully, in his case, he doesn't end up like a Robban, where they really do just think you just stand behind him and then Art Carrigan calls and then you go, bro, whatever the fuck Swedish people say. Like you want, hopefully we want everyone to get the credit for what they do or don't do. I'm with you. By the way, almost certainly your point is right. He has not got almost any credit. Let's be real. I mean, as you say, has anyone ever put this guy in a best coach in the world discussion? I don't think ever, right? Feels like never.
I think I voted him as like third or second. I think second or third on my ballot last year. But I want to also just bring up one more comparison, because I got to just make this a little bit hotter, is that you got to, like, one thing that we were so fond of doing when the Australis core was breaking up, we started pinning them against each other and thinking, oh, who was the person that was responsible for their success? Oh, we see Zonic won with Vitality. Oh, we see Glaive was failing for such a long time without any help from Zonic. Oh, Device, he actually still looked pretty good on NIP by himself. But then I kind of want to draw that same comparison to think about, like, Snappy has the same core that he had with Ents right now. He's got Modern, he's got Sunpias, he even has Zonic behind him, and yet then that core didn't make it to the major. That core failed with s1mple at the showdown to Metisport. Like, and then on the other hand, you have a Saw that's working with, in my eyes, what should have been a worse in-game leader in kyxsan. Maybe he's younger, maybe he's able to soak up information a little bit faster, but you look at the pieces one for one, and it's not close. Like, the Falcons team has better individuals, hands down, and yet they weren't able to do as much damage as this Heroic team is consistently able to inflict. And so if I just have to go one for one, like, because this is kind of how, like, the pleb reductive situation and conversation has to go. It's like, who's more important, Snappy or Saw? As it stands right now, it's undoubtedly Saw.
I do appreciate, though, that they don't even say more important, Murray. They just believe that one person in every scenario is the god puppet master, and the other are just soulless husks just dancing to their fight. I know, like, they don't even divide credit. That's like, it was all him. It was all him, and he's a fraud. It's like, by the way, guys, I'm just going to say this out there. You are giving away a massive self-report that you're very insecure about who you are as a person, that your analysis of every player is he's a total fraud and not what he pretends to be. Like, Like, you're just evaluating game players for fuck's sake.
Yeah,
Like,
I know. It's even like Cadian and Stown splitting, and then people going Stown.
Yes.
Oh, you were nothing without Cadian, and then they both don't do well, and people are just like, oh, what do I think?
I know. Like, no, the joke is at the end when they see Katie and Stown Phil, they're like, but who do I think is the fraud? It's like, you're the fraud! The fraud was in the mirror the whole time. The call was coming from inside the house the whole time. Exactly. Right, okay. Speaking of which, though, this is perfect because this moves into my bad point, and Maui already teased it unknowingly, which is, bro, I'm actually going to frame this the most annoying, incendiary way possible because it's what I do. Listen, Baryshnikov danced, Mozart composed. I do this. I play your emotions. So this is how I'm going to phrase it. This is how I know every single one of you, no matter what you would say when not hooked up to a lie detector, actually does in your heart of heart know s1mple is the best player to ever play Counter-Strike in any context ever. And the reason I know you all believe it as much as you believe tomorrow the sun will come out. Here's how I know you believe it. Because the guy has never played CS2 before. He came in, 8 months after everyone started playing, got dropped into an online game to play a team, by the way, that grinds like a motherfucker right now, the Metasport team, and they're actually pretty good. And you all, for real, expected him to be the best player in the world. You know you did. Don't deny it. The reason you're going so hard, because my bad point is the reaction to s1mple playing for Falcons. Bro, people actually are trying to act like he is washed after his only ever series in CS2. Which implies, like I said, that's why I phrased it that way. It's not that I knew he was a fraud the whole time. Shit. No. If he was a fraud, you'd go, let him play a month and I bet he'll be shit. No, you want him to literally just stop playing now because in your heart, you thought he was going to carry 2. Admit it, motherfucker. You all thought he might actually just walk in there and drop a 30 bomb because we all know he's s1mple. And then I'll just leave lastly a real piece of analysis, which is, bro, he wasn't even that bad in these games. What are you talking about? Like, first of all, he isn't the AWP, remember, dickhead. Like, he actually was playing like an aggressive rifle role. I even saw rounds on T-side, by the way, where he looked like a role player. He looked like actually he wasn't like, I'm s1mple, give me all the shit. Like, he wasn't even trying to be CS, go s1mple. So I actually thought, look, it wasn't a great game. I know they could have still won. It was still close. It's not like Falcons was great, but people's overreaction to this. Boys, everyone laughed at everyone for saying Zero was shit after like 4 maps. He at least was playing the game the whole time, and he was in the best team in the world. This motherfucker's on the Falcons team. You all say shit, and he played 1 game, 1 ever, and everyone acted like he's washed. He quit CS2. It's like, what is this?
Sometimes I think it's our fault that people's reactions are so fast that because if we make a joke about something that just happened, that people think that's serious about one game, that they think that, oh yeah, it's truly a sign of bad times for like the next year or something, that you can't have an off map or an off day without it just being a joke.
Yes.
Who thinks that if s1mple played entire month of matches with this team on Falcons, that his average rating wouldn't level out? Maybe it wouldn't be 130, but it'd be 115.
Yes.
And you wouldn't have anything to say. I mean, that's just a fact.
They're acting like CS2 is like Zero having to actually wear the Bane mask, but all it shoots into him instead of venom is Katowice air.
Like, it's literally easier. The game is literally easier.
Keep going.
The game is literally easier. All these players just have to play, and s1mple didn't play it, so they have to play it more.
Yes.
Whether or not he gets back to top 5 or top 15 doesn't make him a fraud if he's not number 1. You know what I mean? That's a totally different sort of strata of expectation for someone like s1mple, who's playing, trying to make success on an international team in CS2 after taking a break, after whatever, all these things. So I'm with you. I mean, I don't think he's going to be top 1, but again, that has nothing to do with being a fraud. Like, what the fuck? Like,
it's the way low key. That is like, we've actually nailed it, guys. It's not even about anything to do with CS. It's just like, essentially, the fans seem to think this isn't a sports scene. We're just playing Among Us. We're just trying to find the imposter. Like, that's like the whole game that we're playing. Like, wait a minute, he wasn't really winning that major. Look, he was pretending to do that task. Like, they were, by the way, all the really good players were spoiler. They were just really good. But you know the ones that aren't as good anymore. They're just not as good anymore. Like, I'm sorry, I know I'm sorry that sexiest storyline, but it's just life in it.
Yeah.
Come on, what do you think, Maui?
Well, the fan reaction to being as polarizing as they possibly can and incendiary, I feel like, yeah, when Launder says we're in part responsible for that, I mean, I am the one that said after 3 series of ZywOo playing CS2, I said, and quote, that he, after 3 series of CS2, he is not right now a top 10 player. That was my statement, end quote. But it was just that people took it like, oh my God, you think that ZywOo is the worst player on the planet? It's like, no, literally after these 3 series, I know 10 people that are better than him at this game. And so people always try to up the ante with these kinds of statements. They always say, he's a fraud, he's terrible, you're saying he's shit. And it's like, no, I'm just saying he might be the 11th best player right now. But there's a lot of time to prove this. But it's like, you have to know how to like stoke the flames without actually saying something that's going to just make you look like a complete moron. And so I feel like I walk the fine line to do that pretty well, but some people are just, self call outs when they say like simple as wash, he's never going to be good again. Like, no, you're right. He was actually pretty good in this Metasport thing. Like, especially on CT sides, like, yeah, I'm playing these rifle positions that I haven't seen him play since probably Guardian was on Navi. Like, it's been so long since seeing him do this stuff, and he was totally serviceable throughout most of this. And this isn't even cope. It's just that, yeah, the expectation was much higher for him. And I myself had it too. I thought that he was going to maybe blow people away or show some kind of donk level of form. Maybe not donk, but like something that was at least comparable to like what a 1.2 rating player should have. And yeah, he didn't really do that, but it's a brand new team. He's playing with 4 new players. He's also speaking. Let's also get this straight. Like, he hasn't spoken English on a roster for some time either. And so even though he can speak English well, like, don't get me wrong, but like, that obviously leads to a little bit of lag in terms of your decision making.
I will say, you know what? I won't do it in a BM way. I'll say it in a polite way, but put it this way. When people watch my Reflections interview with s1mple and they go, wow, he's answering really quick. I edited out the pauses. Is that a big shock for you? It just made it a better interview, guys. Like, as Maury says, he still said all the same things in perfect English, but it takes him a bit longer to think. So I will say it's why logically it will be harder to be an international team. You do have to throw that in there, even though he was briefly in the Navi that was international. No, I think people have gone way too far in that shit. Here's the thing, though. Low key, though, Maui, I agree with you. Because he is the GOAT, so it was possibly came in and randomly had like a big drop. So here's what I'm actually really glad with, though. I'm actually really glad that over the whole series he was kind of like a similar level. Because I'm no joke, if he had have actually just randomly 30 bombed the first game, I'd have probably been out there doing the opposite of the fans. He's back! He's going to be the GOAT again! He's back! Wait a minute! Holy fuck! Put him in Navi now! Kyxsan Pius! Get him on the AWP! I'd probably say that shit myself. So then he would have just flamed the rest out and I'd have looked stupid, but it's okay. I never got too invested in this one. Secretly. I did low-key theory that kind of like put one.
The problem with the real problem with Falcons, same as like Liquid and these other teams, is there's nothing to play now. Like they don't have any upcoming matches. They have no upcoming matches at all. I mean, what are we even going to see them in? And if he gets compared with everybody at the end of the year, he missed a half of the year already. It's like,
you know what? I'm going to say it right now. If anyone out there is listening, what are we wasting our fucking time with? Let's just do like a suicide squad. Let's make a tournament during the major. Me, Maui, Freya and YNk will work the event. The teams can be like Astralis, Team Liquid, fucking Falcons. It's not a bad little event we got going here, The
last
yeah,
chance.
let's do it. We'll get it going. And then by the time you're all watching, fucking, oh my God, here we are at the major. Can you believe it? Heroic against Cloud9 in the quarterfinal. We'll be watching fucking Team Liquid play a best of 5 against fucking Falcons, baby. Don't worry about it. It's all good. It's all good. It's all good.
You like tweeted about that, I think, when I was talking about how like let's end this RMR. We want to see like Spirit versus Vitality right now.
Yes.
There is a fucking thirst for that. Just at the moment where everyone is either at their lowest moment or their peak, or their next game would have been better. Just have them play like right then. Everyone would watch. That's the whole point, right?
Dude,
So
I've actually
make it
made this point in the past, but I know, look, I understand because of the way the circuit is, you'd have to unravel so many things. This never could really happen. But I've always said, I actually do think in Counter-Strike, it would be amazing to have like a championship-style belt. Because like you say, the second that Spirit won kind of eats it, didn't we all just wish we could teleport a month in the future and drop like Vitality and fucking Spirit in like a BO5 on LAN and go like, winning gets $1 million? Like, that's like, dude, we all wanted that. We all wanted to see, right, take that donk and just put him against that ZywOo. Let's see it now. Like the UFC, instead of fucking around, because the problem with tournaments is you have to hope they qualify, then get the right group, then all successfully navigate, and then maybe if everything goes right, they meet in the final. You just want it to be like the UFC. It's just the next challenger, right? There you go. You fight the champion. Put him in there. Low key, part of me does feel like, even though you'd have to change the whole circuit, if you did that right, that would be mad addictive, dude. Imagine, because like UFC, imagine the hype. The whole week before, you'd be thinking like the UFC, like, fuck, imagine what could happen. Who's going to win? What does this mean for CS if Don quit? You know what I mean? It would be fucking sick, bros. It would be the best. be the best.
Does anybody even have a vitality point for ugly? I just want to remark on something.
No.
That I need to get off my chest. Okay, I was kind of thinking this is making the ugly thing, but like right now, like for vitality, I'm just so concerned. This is a total tangent, but I'm so concerned about ZywOo barely opping at all. Like, is that concerning anybody else? Like, they're basically playing with 5 riflers. Like in both the Cloud9 series and the Ent series that they played at the RMR, like ZywOo was out-opped by Boomich and he was out-opped by Hades. Like, is this not like can we acknowledge that this is a little bit worrying for Fate or for Vitality and ZywOo, that they don't actually have a strong op presence right now, because he hasn't really bought in on the gun yet in this game.
That's true, and he literally did lose to Cloud9 like in that RMR, right? It was the 2-1 game or something, 2-0 game.
Yep.
So that was an important game where they're trying their hardest. Like they absolutely, wanted to take that. So I guess so. I guess the only thing is, like, I've always, like, even when they had Navera on the team, like 2020, they had ZywOo immediately when Navera joined the team. ZywOo just like dropped the op on every map. He just like stopped opping on Inferno, playing B with an MP9 on Inferno. It was like he just really doesn't want to do it. It does strike me as someone who just literally is doing it because he's the only one they can trust with it, I guess. Like when Navera was on the team, and I really think we lost something there to Valorant. I'm not going to lie. Like I actually think Navera is one of the big losses because he was really good. And he was actually a good enough opper that you could trust him to op. Like when Guardian was opping in place of s1mple, he wasn't actually good enough, or he's just too far along or something. It wasn't working. So s1mple had to take it back after they switched him out. But with Navera, ZywOo did trust him with the op, and he was very good. And then the team was operating. But if ZywOo is going to be the primary opper, but he just doesn't buy the op on like 40 to 50% of the rounds, then Vitality are going to have a problem because they're not in their peak form.
I know what you mean. Like the joke is, if he doesn't op, they start to have the same problem bloody Cloud9 does. Because that's one thing I've always found weird. I'll just say it right now. Right, this is what's whack. I'll tell you right now, because I'll give the quick analogy, even though I know you guys aren't football guys. But if people are Europeans are watching this show, they'll know what I mean. When people do the classic debate, it's like the s1mple versus ZywOo one. In football, it's Messi against Ronaldo, right? And the analogy goes, because it's the same sort of fans play, we're not gravitating to the same player. What people always tried to claim was this: if you're a Ronaldo fan like I am, what you say is, at the end of the day in football, by definition, a goal is the most important thing you can do. It wins you the game, and you lose the game if you don't score them. So the one who scores the most goals is basically the best player to me. Now, what they'll try to argue for the Messi one, because he's sort of like comparably as good a scorer, but he's maybe like a better sort of assist man, as it were. They'll be like, yeah, but he does more though for the team. He does more things. And I'm like, yeah, but as I just said though, you win by scoring goals. Like you don't win by having possession, looking great. You win by scoring. So if my guy really is the best goal scorer, I can just say he's the best he's the best player, case closed. It's the same thing in my opinion with s1mple and ZywOo. I actually think s1mple is just the best fragger ever in Counter-Strike. And I do think fragging will win you or put you in position to win a lot of games. If you could just frag round after round after round after round, especially like they do in the hardest scenarios, you are by definition the most valuable player in the game. I don't care how many clutches Perfecto wins, how many genius rounds Glaive or Carrigan call. At the end of the day, you being on my team and them having a team without you, I'd rather have you. You scoring the frags is going to put me in the best one-man position. Now, similarly for ZywOo, that's why I think they've done this whole angle, guys. Because what their angle is like, oh shit, yeah, they might be right. Maybe no one is better at fragging. Oh, but wait, ZywOo is more versatile. He is a well-rounded. They go with that angle. They try to make it sound like he's got this depth to him, this breadth and thing. But here's the problem with that. I actually think they've gone way too far the other way on that, guys, to go to your point, Launders. When he did it occasionally in the last Vitality in CSGO, and the logic was he does it when it's actually like a map, for example, where it's better. Like maybe on like Vertigo sometimes you should have a rifle, or maybe on T-side Inferno it doesn't make sense to have the AWP and go first and die immediately, right? On those scenarios, it did give some versatility to Vitality. But to bring it back to what you said at the beginning, I do think they're a worse team when he's not an AWPer. Mate, there's a reason a lot of the greatest clips he has are just amazing AWP highlights that no one except s1mple can do. Like, if you take that out of your team, you just lose like a massive knockout punch, don't you?
You're almost calling into question like what he wants versus what the team needs, right? Like if he wants to rifle, that's fine, but the team needs him to op.
Yes.
And like s1mple would never do anything except for what the team needs to win the most. That's why he has the highest KPI.
It's why the joke really is they actually should just fucking play together. If this is the way it is, then just have ZywOo rifle and s1mple op. It seems like you've got not only have you got the problem solved, you'll have the game on fucking lockdown, mate. Yeah. And by the way, I'll just throw this out there. Imagine the world where s1mple is the AWPer and then he dies and then ZywOo's the one picking up the boys. Isn't the table just rising? And I haven't got one of those motorized ones. Like, already's the dream, innit? And the joke is they're all speaking English. They're not even in fucking French and Ukrainian teams anymore. Just get over it already. Just get a hotel room and play together. Play wingman.
That's like the big irony about super teams. We only hate super teams because they fail, because they consistently fail. But that one wouldn't. That one would not fail.
Well, the joke is, if that super team fails, we shouldn't even ever actually acknowledge it failed. We should just end Counter-Strike. We should just be like, you know what? If that doesn't work, it was the game that was shit, not them. Close it down. We're all going to play Valorant or something. You know, like at that point, why even continue?
That conclusion as far as possible.
Exactly.
That was the game all along.
Right. Okay. So then we have the ugly points. So launders, what is your ugly point?
Okay. So my ugly point is that Complexity are a team that if you compare them to all of the like great NA teams or notable NA teams in history, like going back from iBuyPower to early, Sean Gare's Nothing Cloud9 to later EG with Stanislaw to like Liquid, all of these teams, every single one of these rosters have won lands, right? Complexity have won none. Complexity have won 0 lands ever. As an organization, fuck the current lineup. That's the cross that this current lineup has to bear. That they have to do something for Jason Lake here to actually pick up a win somewhere on land. They won one online tournament. They won the London Minor in 2018. It's not a real land, it's a qualifier. Their biggest successes are qualifying to the major, whether it was Rio or like narrowly getting eliminated by Imperial at Rio and then qualifying later at Antwerp. And then these are the biggest, most emotional moments for Complexity because they aren't good enough to actually close the LAN out. Their window of opportunity was in Sydney, where they got second place to FaZe. But when they got to the final, you could see it just like clockwork. Every single time they get into a good rhythm or a close map, or they win a map and get to a close position, they lose consistently. And what can I say? I'm fucking sick of it. And I don't think that they're ever going to win a LAN with this lineup. I think Elysia is the perfect... It's not only the perfect move to help this team move in the right direction, but it's the perfect one to highlight how bad the problem was. Imagine if Elysia didn't exist on this lineup, and the last 6 months we had to watch Complexity, they would have fallen into complete obscurity. We would never be talking about them, and their fall off would need to be studied. It would have been actually horrible. So I think Complexity, they still have, we had Halzerk vindicated by this 4K 2v4 op round versus Ecos to qualify to the major. But outside of that, he's too inconsistent. Grim, we had a player who was touted as an amazing talent because of his time on Triumph when he was placed to be the star player. He was that on Complexity before Elysia joined. He was given space to succeed, but he's been nothing but inconsistent. He has a peak, but his floor is so low. And I've seen this team lose more 1v4s than I think any other fucking lineup ever. And for a team that, when they're on a good day, looks like they're playing top tier European CS and can make finals, still has not won a single LAN. I don't know how much rope they need to be given at this point. And I think if they don't make a run at this major, then they have to make another move.
The points about Halzerk and Grim are pretty accurate. That it's to me, whenever I watch Complexity, I just unfortunately recognize that the team's floor is just so incredibly low. Like they can lose to just about everybody. They'll lose to they'll lose to the Mongols in Atlanta or whatever. They'll lose to so many random teams just kind of in low stakes moments too, where it's not even like, oh, this is a high pressure match. No, they can actually just flat out lose to anybody. I feel like it's really tough for me to pin it on one thing. Like, I don't think the calling is necessarily that bad from JT. I feel like sometimes with late round moments, they can choke up a little bit, but all in all, who really doesn't? Sometimes it's just like, I guess mid-round decision-making on CT side is sometimes where I feel like, what are they doing? They're just kind of sitting on their hands. Like, they don't... Okay, I'll say this, actually. For Complexity, what I think that could really, really help them a lot is, like, I think if they had a more outlined and more obvious philosophy and style for their CT side, or just knew what the whole objective was, or, like, who's supposed to be the point man other than Elysia in these kinds of moments, maybe that would outline some things. Maybe it would kind of get the cogs turning a little bit more, because as it stands right now, I don't always know who's supposed to be next up when Elysia falls. Like, I don't actually know who's supposed... Like, Because yeah, I think on paper it's supposed to be Halzerk and Grim, but a lot of times like JT is weirdly fragging right behind a Liege. He's looked pretty good for himself. Floppy's ups and downs are all over the place, if I'm being honest about him right now. And yeah, you just have a completely different face for every single player day in, day out. You just never really know. And I feel like that makes game planning incredibly hard for this team where just the inconsistencies are so apparent. And if until they actually win something, like I don't see this major being the tournament for them to win something. I think a playoff run is actually doable for them, but I would say unlikely. And you would expect that
Your
by now.
Your pick'em's going to be fucked up if you have them in playoffs. I'm going to tell you that right now.
Yeah, I'm not sure what you would even do. I feel like what's unfortunate about the team the most is that I think if I had to look at any single player right now on this team and who would I replace, I think that the 1-for-1 is probably Halzerk because there's just so many other oppers that you could find a better replacement for. Behind that, it would be Grim for me because he's supposed to be the secondary star to a Liege. And even though Floppy has had a bad stretch of form for himself lately, he doesn't necessarily have the best positions for the team. And I don't feel like plays are outlined for him. But he to me too is a guy where I've seen some pretty low lows from him as well. So I don't even know who to point the finger at. I wouldn't point it at JT and I wouldn't point it at Liege though.
Thing is, I do like the point because I actually do think on a smaller scale, launders, it's kind of like that Cloud9 discussion we had before. Essentially, the good things about the team are masking the really bad points. And essentially, if they ever go away, you're fucked completely. So, like, the problem with this team is this. Like, here's the spicy way to phrase it. It's actually good for this team that they didn't win the IEM Sydney. Because if they'd have won IEM Sydney, they'd have had way more rope, as it were. And they'd have had way more chances. Because, like, hey, they won the event. Even though, by the way, the joke is in the final, they came about as close to winning an event for someone who didn't win an event as maybe anyone ever. Like every map was winnable in that final. It even looked like they had won a few times and inexplicably FaZe came back. So I actually think though that is perfect. If what you see is at their very best, which in this case was the first CS2 tournament with Elige playing the best he could possibly play, they still couldn't win. That is who Complexity is. Because as I keep saying on all these shows, Maui, what actually does drive me crazy is I'm obviously a massive Elige fan. And by the way, this is brilliant validation for me with all the things I said, like give him a chance, put him on another team. He can still play, still really talented. The problem is, this is the nightmare scenario for your Elige because I actually think he almost couldn't play better the whole time in CS2. He looks really fucking good, guys. Like, he's clearly a top 10 player in CS2. He's just amazing. But he has to do that just for them to lose all these games we're talking about that are like 13-11s and third maps and every close. Like, he has to actually be essentially better than Complexity level just to drag Complexity to this relevance. And the reason why that sucks is it isn't only Elige. I actually think Elige and JT are two good pieces, mate. Like, I've seen enough of JT's career. Now, the guy's just a good IGL. Yeah, he had his fragging problems in CSGO. Bizarrely, in CS2, that's better. And then secondly, I actually always did think the most underrated thing about his Cloud9, the NA one, was actually some of the tactics and some of the setups and how they would, like, have the coordination on utility usage. Some of it was really good stuff, guys. Like, I could tell for real, like, that him and that TC guy were in the fucking lab cooking all the time. And now the problem they had, like Furia, was they would come with the new shit and then everyone else went, yeah, thanks, that's brilliant, I'll take that. And then the better teams just took the shit and used it against them and ran, so they didn't ever get like the full credit for that. But no, if you start with those two pieces, JT, Elige, now of the others, you know what, maybe I say you keep Floppy, because I have heard a lot of good things from teammates that he played any role. Maybe I keep Floppy. Guys, the other positions, like, Complexity was just bought for $10 million, right? They're a team that's in the rankings. Why can't they just be the people who buy a young star? Like, I'll give you an example right now. If I told you tomorrow, all I'm changing is this one move. I've managed to sell Halzerk and I bought Nork. Bro, you'd be like twice as excited for this team. Like, you might even think, hey, they might fuck around and make like the final of the next event. Like, this isn't a bad team. Like, I don't think they're that many pieces away, especially because they've got the IGL and they've got the Star Rifler. Like, by the way, even though for some reason people aren't picking them up, there are a million good AWPers right now, guys. It's really crazy. I've never seen this much AWP talent ever in any version of Counter-Strike. Like, we're at the point now where, especially if you're willing to recruit like a Russian player, The joke is we could go like 10 deep on the names, boys. It's crazy how many talented players there are. So to me, I just hope they get a better AWPer. Like, I won't hate on the other players. It's mainly the role that Holzerk's play. I don't think he's going to play, but he's also the AWPer. In my opinion, if you want to win tournaments, your AWPer has to be pretty good, or that everything else better be amazing. So yeah, that's my issue right there. Is it's why I keep saying all I want is buy 1 star, please. Just buy 1 star, and then I'm good. Because I have enjoyed watching the team. Aside from that, it's just that, like you say, you can bet on them to disappoint you at the end of the tournament. They'll never make good on their promise, you know.
Yeah, it's the expectations. That's it, and that they set.
Sure.
And I would like to just apologize to Elige for my thought crime of when he was on Liquid, really thinking that his toxicity was the reason that the team would end up losing, and it took me seeing him go to a worse team and having to be punished, Elige, carrying complexity to these close losses to make me realize that he deserved to be mad, because he actually cares about winning the match more than anyone else, and that's why he was so mad. Whereas I thought when he was on Liquid that the team is so good, what are you complaining about? You were part of it. But you can really see now, man, he's trying with every single iota.
Whereas the worst thing is, Maui thought Twists was better, whereas, as anyone knows, Twists now has been proven that he was a fraud the whole time. He never, ever did anything, ever. He was carried by Elysian Team Liquid, then Carrigan in FaZe, and now he's truly been exposed as just a puppet with no puppet master. No, that sadly, by the way, I tell you what, I'll do another obvious prediction. First of all, Twist isn't even bad in Liquid, but he'll be right back to the top soon as well. Don't worry about that.
He's
Again,
great.
Same scenario. They're both in teams where they get to do everything they want there. He'll be mega soon. Don't worry. He'll be a top player in CS2 as well. Jokes aside.
I think you're right about him in the same way that, you know, like s1mple wins over Zywoo. Like, you can clearly see, like, as an individual, he just has it in a way. And like, your eyes can't tell you otherwise. But I will say that on this fucking Liquid lineup, like, Twist and Naf have been amazing, actually. Like, consistently.
They're good.
The same numbers as they were on their best, and just getting let down completely. And also, I'll say that I don't think it's for sure that FaZe will be as good with Frozen than they will with they were with Twist. How much they won, like, Twist trade fragging actually was superb, and I don't think that, like, FaZe have figured out everything quite yet. I think the stats made sense, the role made sense for Frozen, but I don't actually know that Frozen is going to make the team better.
Right, Maui.
It's a pretty high bar, though. I mean,
what is your ugly point, Maui?
Mine is the move that Energy made after they crashed out of the RMR pretty badly. They went 0-2 in that one. They swapped out Fang for Automatic, and the reason I put this as an ugly point is because this is actually a good move for NRG. Like, Automatic should be better than Fang for my money. It's just that now, what's funny is that they also replaced DUBS with YNk, and now what you're essentially playing with is the core of the EG lineup that was floundering at the end of CSGO.
Yes, it's true.
The team came in dead
EG
last.
Black, though, right? Like,
no, it was EG. No, literally at the last ESL Pro League, season 18, that was still CSGO. They played
when
with,
they got promoted.
Yeah, well, yeah. YNk was promoted for a while. And it was Automatic, YNk, and Hex were all playing on that team together. And that's 3 of the players that NRG have right now. And this team was not even remotely competitive. The other 2 players at the time were George and Junior. And I mean, OC should be better than Junior was then. So that, like, I should, but in terms of everything I've seen from this team, OC is actually not better than Junior was then. OC has actually been not that strong of a player on NRG, unfortunately. And so even though on paper, this single move for Automatic for Fang should be good, like, Fang was under-delivering in some of the positions that he was put in. Like, he was supposed to be, like, again, he's like playing Alicia's roles. So he's supposed to do very well for this team. And the team didn't have, in my eyes, necessarily bad structure. It was just sometimes on CT side, Fang just didn't really hold his positions. Like, he'd have certain problems on particular maps where he's tasked with doing a lot in these spots. And I can trust Automatic more so in these positions, just like I could trust Elige, and that's why the 1-for-1 for complexity was obviously very good. But all in all, like, this NRG lineup at the beginning, I felt like maybe they can do some damage with this. Maybe DUBS can actually roll it back. And everything has shown me otherwise on that. And beyond that, like, we're just, like, the greater picture of this all is that how bad is North America right now, where there really was nobody else on the table, where you kind of have to just keep recycling players who are coming in last place at international competitions, because frankly speaking, I don't actually think there was a better option for NRG here. I think Automatic probably was the best move they could have even done, and that's just an indictment on the entire continent of North America.
All right, fucking hell.
Yeah,
Okay.
fair
I
enough,
went
though,
0 to
true.
60 at the end there, didn't it? Fucking hell, all right.
Yeah, that's just a fact. Yeah, that's it's pretty rough. I mean, like Fang was like one of the people who just like people were up on him. He had good attitude, I think. Like, and then like people started talking about his comms not being great while he was actually playing. So just things changed up, I guess. Like, I don't know where else you go either. I do think that I think that Walco did show some good stuff with Junior on EG Black before the promotion took place. They actually looked like he could call some good rounds, and I think that Walco could be a good place to start with the IGL, but like it has to go like coach IGL up, and then everything else is actually not superfluous, but like you could trade in players and less would matter. I mean, I say if you have an OC, then you have the proper IGL and then a proper coach, you can make something like real out of this roster. But like, I mean, I'm grasping for straws. Like it is grim out here.
By the way, one thing I don't get is, this is one part I found weird, is like, and DUBS is like, and then I'm going to become coach. It's like, you know, you should have just had a coach anyway. What? Wait, how's no one mentioned that part? Why wasn't there a coach? Like, what? Why were you IGLing and coaching? What? Like, I still don't get that part, but we'll just put that to one side. Because the weird part, go on, who was it?
Yeah, well, Mix was like an analyst, but they didn't have a coach.
Oh, yeah.
So that was like the logic,
so
because he's using like Chet there.
Well, he kind of was supposed to be a coach, I think. I think he was like a temp, like an interim coach, but I don't think they like didn't really give him that position entirely. Like he was basically an analyst, I think.
Because my problem with this move is actually mainly on the DUBS side of it. It's that like, why? This is what I hate moves where you do two things that are potentially really complicated, but at the same time, so it's impossible to A/B test them. Like, here's what I want. Have Automatic join while DUBS is still IGL. Then if it doesn't work out, have DUBS go coach. Because here's the problem. I don't doubt DUBS could be a coach, but I know he was a way better IGL, and I know that the guy bringing in is not the same as DUBS as IGL. So my problem there is you've actually taken some of my interest in NRG away by removing DUBS. And when I see Automatic, I want to see Automatic with DUBS. I want to see how they play together. Remember, they played together in Gen G years ago, guys. Like, I want to see what can they do here? Because I actually do think Automatic, look, his flaw as a player is very good. There's a reason why he's been in all these teams. He's never ever the problem. He's never the one that's bad. I will say, in that interview I did with him a few months ago, it was very weird though, because I'll tell you what's very bizarre about him. Essentially, he actually is like, he's like that TikTok meme of like, I want problems always. Because like, he essentially admitted that he won't just do roles he's really good at. The reason he did stuff like force himself to be the AWPer is he just wants to be challenged and learn something he's not yet good at, which is like, I mean, that's one way to live life, I guess.
Win.
I know.
Wait till we win first.
I know, exactly. That's exactly. You're right, though, lauders. That's like the sort of shit you do after you've won your 4 majors. You know what? I might fuck around and just play it. It's like, bro, we need to win a bit more first. You know, let's get to the top. Then let's experiment. You know, Larry Bird played the whole game with his left hand. Yeah, one game when they were really good. He didn't just like say, I'm just playing the rest of my career with my left hand. It'll be a challenge, won't it? It's like, well, yeah, because it's fucking impossible. So that one I don't like. I also do think as well, the problem with this team, I'll go back to that point, is as soon as DUBS isn't the IGL, this may as well just be an Evil Geniuses line. It's just an underwhelming, like, all right mix of NA players that probably won't ever do anything. Surely, well, we were all hoping that, like, what was going to happen in the tournament was Breeze would actually play well with the rifle, DUBS would make some genius calls. Remember, he's mega overqualified for this team. OC would AWP like he did at his peak in the old Cloud9. These are what you're hoping for. So, unfortunately to me, I'm just less interested in an RG because I know that coaches can't have the same impact IGL has. By the way, now you also see why all those fucking people took forever to become coaches, because they even used to tell me privately, not only is it way less satisfying, like in terms of winning, to be the winner as the coach as opposed to the IGL, but you just never get, like, even if you make the call in the timeout, like before, like we said, well, the joke is, unless the guy says in the interview you made the call, you never ever get the credit for that call, you know? Like, you get to win, but it's not the same as making the call, making the frag, winning the round. It's never going to be the same. So actually, sadly, I think it's a shame if this is the end of DUBS' career. I think on this team, he was more than fine to stick around. I wouldn't have blamed him. I actually would would have liked to see him give it more time. He only had a couple of fucking months. He was all that time. He had a couple of months. And he just bounced already. Like, that's the other thing I'm having a real hard time with in Counter-Strike now. The whiplash of how fast these roster moves are getting cancelled and reversed. Like, bro, can we actually get like some fucking matches under the belt? Like, basically this one is you failed one RMR where it's like half an RMR. That's it. It's just out. We're just done already with the lineup.
Now it's become an open secret, though, about sticker money. And so orgs have the right to just base everything around the major results. It's like the tech layoffs. Like once one person did it, everyone else could do it. So it's like, now it's just a standard. Now, you know, the major's coming up, you fail that. Org doesn't even have to say, sorry, you're cut. So,
dude, you just made me realize if someone wanted to make the funniest satirical TikTok, here's what it would be. So, you know, when they were in EG and they were terrible and they were losing like every game at every blast and every ESL Pro League, you should have done a TikTok spoof of those people who eventually got fired from all the tech companies in San Francisco. You know what it would be like? Here's a regular day of me. And they'd go up in the morning like, double choco maco latte pala pulu with soy, please. They get the big thing. And now I'm going to go into one of our little meditation booths. And then the joke is at the end of the day, you're like, you already sent 3 emails. The fuck is this person doing? I'd love to know what they were doing in EG. Was it just like that? Like, now we have 2 hours of theory session. I didn't hear any of that, but we don't win anyway. It's like, what were they even doing all day? What are we doing?
Yeah, like 100% it was like that. I mean, how many people didn't take the run and org, dude? Honestly, like, none of you are even playing. Like, what the fuck? That's 90% of the job. You're just doing massages and shit. So I don't know. I really don't.
And obviously GamerDoc was there. I mean, we all know she did an important thing. What she would do is each day she would hold the door open, and as he walked in, she'd go, welcome, you have just entered the pipeline of talent, like whatever that tweet. By the way, Richard actually did make a great point the other day in his Astralis video where he criticised that like bad PR statement, that bad statement they made about all the like NIP shit. And he did make a point that I thought he has nailed it. He said, do you think if GamerDoc could go back in time and just not send that tweet, that she would even be thinking for a second, like she would instantly like delete the tweet and instantly like, no joke, that one tweet just undone her completely, like, even though it's just one tweet, but it was a bad tweet though. It was a bad tweet, let's face it. Come on, It was a bad tweet. Right, last one. Oh, go on. Do you have a final point?
Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say, like, how scary is it? I mean, maybe it's scary, but like the fact that Steel gets unbanned in 1 year, and that's probably still the best prospect NA has to have an IGL or an.
Even though, by the way, low-key, I actually do really like Steel on desks. I actually would love to see him as an analyst. I think he could also add a lot. Mate, I'm amazed teams haven't thought that angle through yet. Like, that's a pretty shallow role. I mean, the joke is people like DUBS will get to do because there's no one left. Like, mate, I would take Steel tomorrow on some of these teams. Like, why wouldn't you? In fact, I'd give him full control. I'd give him a bunch of these sorts of players, like this exact line. Just say, you control the whole thing, mate. If you think they shit, fire them. If you think they should do a different role, put them in that role, mate. I'd trust you more than I trust these players to know what they're doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you could just put him on some kind of like cheaper contract, but once he can actually compete in the major cycle, then actually it's a more results-oriented thinking. But yeah, if you give him a year of runway, like, why wouldn't he be able to bring up a team and just like pick and choose a couple people that are up and comers right now? And I mean, the thing is that, in all honesty, I think, I mean, I've talked to Josh about this. He's said that, like, you know, he does want to feel out the analyst role a little bit. Seems like he's going to be working a bit on the circuit this upcoming year. And then, like, once he gets unbanned, he'll feel out his position there, and he'll also probably see like what's available for him if he does return as a player.
Also, by the way, one of the reasons why famously me and Richard used to say when those players got banned, just make it 5 years. Because the joke was 5 years almost was a lifetime ban back then. No one gets to be a pro player for more than 5 years. Like, to me, I even said, mate, if you can wait out 5 years, that's like doing your prison time, at which point you rehabilitate, come back to society. So, mate, the joke is like we're saying, it'd only be next year, guys. It's actually totally plausible this guy could actually IGL and qualify to a major 10 years after being banned. Wouldn't that be like one of the most insane fucking storylines of all time? Look, obviously it has a negative element, but it'd be pretty fucking like, except here's the thing. I'll give Steel this credit though. Steel is very much an old school gamer in that, and here's the thing, boys. I know you're all loving this new era of emotion and, you know, fucking, Steel wouldn't cry. I'm telling you. I know you're all thinking he'd do like the full one, like all glaive and all fucking D-hand. He wouldn't. Steel would just sort of be like, in fact, he'd probably even have like a shit-eating grin, like, haha, told you, you know. Like,
yeah,
it'd be worth it just for that. Anyway, my final point is this, and what I'm going to do is, remember, it's ugly, so it's not bad, but it's ugly. I've actually intentionally, I said it before, it's another indulgent one. The reason I've framed it this way is I agree with you, Launders. The problem with any major hiring is, by definition, it sounds like you're talking trash on the people hired if you big up out the people who didn't get hired. I don't want to do that. What I want to do is this. I just want to give flowers to 2 other people who didn't get hired. So we already talked about Maui. The idea of Freya and YNk aren't hired. look, we don't have to make this about who was hired instead. You can all decide for yourself who you would hire and who you wouldn't. But all I'm going to say is, I think these two people are a contender for best in the world at their role. I think their flaw is mental. I think they nail it pretty much every event. And I even think that they've now both specialized enough that you can't have someone one for one do exactly what they do. Like Freya actually has nailed that aspect of hosting that is almost like being a news reporter. You take the thing from here, you do this like very polished thing here, you know what the next person wants, you set them up, you hand it over to them, you bring it back, you bring it to the next. She's doing that fucking amazingly. That's why when you watch events, she actually has that thing that's both a compliment and a diss. She can eventually become somewhat invisible. She just fades in the background and the desk just functions, that's A+ for that. And then YNk, unless you really can't understand the accent, I don't know what you're hating on this guy. Like, I'll even say this, that point I made before about incentives, right? If you're going to look at someone like Maui, right? If you're an idiot out there, this is a very serious point to make. If you're an idiot fan who thinks Maui's fucking up by doing the Thorin, by giving these like sensationalist points or maybe daring to antagonize fans, well, how can you tell him the incentive is you'll get hired if you don't do that? Since YNk never did that and he doesn't get hired. So what incentive structure have we created? So Maui tried being the best and doing like some spicy shit. That doesn't get you hired. YNk tried just being the best. That doesn't get you hired. Like, what does get you hired? Being fucking PGL guys, arse slicker. What gets you hired nowadays? I don't get it. So I think these two people, I feel really bad for both these. I feel bad for fans because we won't get to see what they would have done in the major. But if you're those two people, the sad thing is you might go to sleep tonight and put your head on the pillow and there might be an intrusive thought of like, could I have done something different? What did I do? And there shouldn't be any, mate. You did nothing wrong. You nailed your job. And even if you didn't get hired, I just want to say flowers to those people. They are the best. Like, I was looking this up today. I'm going to do a video on it. It would actually stand your hair on end if you knew how few majors YNk's worked as an analyst, bro. I think it's something meant like 5. 5. Like, obviously, he worked some as an observer before that didn't count, but that's mental. Dude, this guy, think about it. Remember, he got to the top with us in like 2016, bro. This guy should have done, like, again, 10 majors or something. What the fuck are we doing at this point in time? By the way...
Because you missed the E-League majors too, right?
Yeah, that's part of it. Yeah. Even though, famously, I even told E-League, I literally told the E-League hiring guy to his face, yes, if there was a choice between me and YNk, obviously I would pick me, but the fans would pick YNk, you idiot. Just hire him. Like, you've actually picked the wrong person here. So, whatever. That's my piece. There you go.
Yeah, I back that completely. I mean, I don't know what else there is even to add. Like, I mean, I've worked with Freya at Blast for so long now that it was like, it's kind of amazing. Like, you're kind of like waiting for her to fuck something up, like one throw, and she does everything so fast that it does shove her into like a specific style that she recreates every single time. But the fact is, I don't know if anybody else could actually do that, like, as consistently, like literally never messes up ever. It's pretty unbelievable. And she's somebody who doesn't talk about this, but she said like the reason why she wanted to do this because everyone said that she would never be able to be good on camera.
Oh, really?
When she was growing up. Yeah, she basically had like her teachers and stuff like that. It was like that story, saying that she was too shy, she would never be good at presenting, never be good on camera. And she said that now that she's found out that she's can be good at it and she works hard as fuck. You've seen her notes, same as like Sue, that kind of thing. She says that this is all she wants to do forever, actually. So she loves it and she's really good at it. And yeah, so.
By the way, since you just reminded me of it, one thing I'll quickly say on the Freya thing as well is, here's why I actually think she is irreplaceable. Because here's the thing, let's be real, I'm not blind. Like, if I had to say who's a better host, yeah, Shox is probably a better host. Shox is probably, by the way, Shox might be like the GOAT of hosting in esports. I watch League of Legends the whole time. She's amazing. But here's the difference. Shox is just a fan of CS in the sense that she'll watch it if it's on sometimes. She'll work the odd event. Freya literally is Counter-Strike, guys. She comes from Counter-Strike. She's a genuine Counter-Strike fan. And here's the difference. Normally, when we work with those hosts that are people who do multiple games or their strength is just hosting, normally the big up, like you're saying, they're on is how many questions do they ask? How many things do they research? Freya isn't doing that because the joke is, I've even told her this many times, Maui knows this, I tried to get her to do an analyst segment. I actually wanted her to be an analyst sometimes. I think she watches way easily enough of the game. She's known many, many players over the years. Like, this person is way better. She's not just a host. The joke is she's almost using like the iceberg theory of, because she does know what she's talking about, she then can ask the question even better to you so that you can give the auto. What do you think, Mo? You've worked with both these people.
Of course. For Freya, who I've worked alongside much more than YNk, I would just say that in terms of knowing that everything's going to go according to plan, and also she's going to let the segment Breathe, there's no one better than Freya that I've worked with because I mean, like, I don't want to like just compare and contrast hosts that I've worked with necessarily, but in terms of getting some of my hardest hitting lines out, I've actually almost always gotten them out with Freya beside me because she never really steps on anybody's toes in a way that lets like the analysts have their big moments too. And I feel like sometimes hosts try to insert themselves a little bit into the segment. And I think that there is an appropriate time and place for that. But I also think that they're like recognizing that is something that sometimes people, everybody wants to be sometimes the star for a second. And I don't think Freya ever truly needs to be the star. Like, I actually don't like she's the best supportive host while making sure that everything is delivered flawlessly. And she also watches the game at such a high level that she asks the right questions on the desk. Like, before I go on desks with Freya, I pretty much never have to prompt her on anything because she's probably already going to know it intuitively. And if I do, well, then she's going to throw me that question that I want. If I want to speak about something, I let her know. She makes sure that I get that point out. She knows also run of show. She'll like study that before we get started so that she knows how to set these segments up. And she does a few things that some of the other hosts don't do. And again, I'm not going to say names of certain people to compare and contrast directly, but like, as it stands, I've worked with Freya more as a host than I think anybody. I really, yeah, it probably has to have been Freya. So my comfort with Freya is at the highest level. And with YNk, on the other hand, it's a shame because like every single segment YNk has, he actually does deliver a bit of insight, and I don't think I actually just can't always say that about other people. Like sometimes I watch segments and I just feel like I don't really feel like I learned anything or I got a greater perspective for the game when I watch that segment. And with YNk, I feel the thing is he's always watching. Like one thing that people might not know, and this might I don't know if YNk, I'll just say it anyways because it speaks about his character. A lot of times with YNk, he's not the guy in the green room that is necessarily always like shooting the shit, having the most like the craziest back and forth discussion, getting into an argument. Because like sometimes like Thorin, you and I have been in a green room before, and we talk about God knows what for a lot of that game, and we're like one eye about that conversation and one eye on the game itself. But YNk is sometimes goes to his own green room, separate from everybody else, just so he can focus more on the game than he would otherwise. Because I don't know. Sometimes that's because he doesn't want to be in a room with Kassad, but sometimes it's actually because he does want to watch the game at a high level. So I respect YNk a lot for that because he's a man that's serious about his job and serious about his business. And so just to not see both of them, it's a shame. And I just kind of like. It's tough because it's usually in these kind of positions, it's who would you replace? And it's a tough question. It's a tough question because you would like to just be additive, but that's not always the possibility.
Yes. I mean, I would phrase it like I said to the E-League guy, basically. Here's the thing. Look, I'm a very self-confident person. If you ask me, could I do the best job? Yeah, I could be the best ever, because I actually think of the desk as entertainment. But if you think about the role of analyst, like the literal meaning of analyst, YNk is the best ever in Counter-Strike, because I agree. If you ever listen to any segment YNk ever did, I'll tell you what every single one contained. He literally always broke down for you the one or two most important rounds of the whole game, every single time. And by the way, that is almost the main job of an analyst in a post-game segment. Is like, tell me what the meat and potatoes of this game was and how it turned. And this guy is the best ever at doing that. In fact, I would say he even basically wrote the script for how to do that. We all just copied it afterwards. Not me, I was having to do my own shit, but I think everyone else just followed in his footsteps, as it were.
I think also just on the accent thing, because I heard that this is a weird thing about like E-League, but just like on behalf of North America, I don't think we care nearly as much about people's English accents as Europeans do when they're talking about each other. So that's like a weird thing that I never understood. Like sometimes like Pimp will come up to me and he's like, what do you think about my accent? And I'm like, I don't give a shit. Like I'm from Toronto, bro. Like everyone speaks like completely differently here and it doesn't matter at all to us. But when Europeans talk about each other, they're like fucking Danish dog, Polish dog, Swedish dog. They just call each other dog and like toilet and shit like that. I'm like, why are you doing that? Just because of your accents? Like no one cares. You're all speaking English wrong in the first place. So
I don't know why he has to reference me on that podcast from 10 years ago. I mean, fucking been and gone. That was 11 years ago now, Lawrence. Let it go already. Let it go, bro.
When I first watched that, I was just a fan, so I've been waiting for this moment.
Of course.